Yavi. Yavi? Did I say? Oh, there you go.
Avi.
Avi, we are live. I mean,
Wow, are we?
yes. So welcome everybody.
Hello.
So, well, first of all, I want to acknowledge everybody who's watching this video. You're watching most likely because you completed an italki challenge. I acknowledge you for putting all these hours practicing speaking a foreign language. It's really awesome. My name is Brian Kwong, and my friend here, Gavin here.
Hi, my name is Gavin Roy.
Cool. And so we do a quick introduction of who we are and why we are answering these questions that you guys have. So my name is Brian, and I was born in Hong Kong, and my first foreign language was English. My second language was English. I immigrated to America when I was 12 years old, and then I didn't go to any ESL classes, so I went straight into where all the American kids went. So basically, I was picked on a lot, made fun of a lot, but I persevere and learn to speak English.
And now you have an American accent.
Like a native person. So that's my first foreign language. And then years later, I married an Austrian woman, and then I I resisted learning German. I didn't want to learn German, to be very honest with you. And then, but a year and a half later, I was touched and moved by my father-in-law, because he embraced me into the family. He never pushed me to learn German. You know, some people would say, hey, you should learn. He never pushed me. So after a year and a half, I felt I was touched by him, so I wanted to communicate with him. So I took on a 90-day challenge to be able to hold a 15-minute conversation with him in 90 days. And I documented this whole thing on YouTube. And then after that, that's when I came up with an idea of the @ONE challenge, where language learners around the world get together to support each other, motivate each other to aim for the same goal of holding a 15-minute conversation in 90 days. So that's what I created, the @ONE challenge, to help people to stay motivated, stay consistent, give them accountability so that they can reach the goal of holding a 15-minute conversation in 90 days. And I have a lot of polyglot friends. I have a lot of people who are in the @ONE challenge are polyglots. So I will bring a lot of these answers. I could be bringing, all the things that they share into this webinar. So I'll be sharing all these things that I've learned throughout the last 2.5 years running the @ONE challenge with you guys. So Gavin, to you.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Brian. That's awesome to know your backstory. So I'm from the United States originally, the state of Ohio, and like most American kids, I didn't have to start learning a foreign language really at all if I wanted to. But I eventually ended up starting to learn Spanish in high school. Never really connected with me. I had one class left to take at the university level in the language, and it happened to be with a Colombian professor. And she inspired me so much. I realized that when you learn a new language, you're learning a culture. You're learning how to communicate with someone, And I graduated from college with a Spanish minor then, but I still felt like I couldn't really talk with a native speaker, and that's the whole point of learning another language, right? So after 4 years of study, I can't even speak the language. What's that about? I went down to Peru for 6 weeks to try to work on my Spanish fluency, and the experience was so rewarding to really be able to conjugate verbs and sentences to make people laugh in another language that I kind of fell in love with it. And as soon as I was back, I started grad school here in the state of Colorado now in atmospheric science. And I had a little bit of free time, and I decided I wanted to learn another language. I wanted to go through the process again. So kind of randomly, I started learning Brazilian Portuguese because of its similarity to Spanish. And I just fell in love with it. It's been interesting trying to balance Spanish and Portuguese now. But about 2 years ago, I started a YouTube channel in Brazilian Portuguese, and that channel has grown, and now I share English tips as a native English speaker, but in Portuguese for a mostly Brazilian audience. And I know some of them may be watching this right now, but this is going to be a surprise for them too, that I would love, just like you said, learning a new language, you have reasons for wanting to and wanting to do it in a short period of time. I think a goal in the short-term future would be to learn Czech due to heritage and so other interesting features of the language. So that's my story.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, man. Cool. So we have lots of questions. We can go for. We're just gonna answer as many questions as possible, and we're gonna share our stories and making it as entertaining as possible. So you learn something. Definitely, you need to learn something from. And
You
at the
will.
same time, we keep it interesting as possible, as much as possible. So let's jump into questions, shall we? So let's. I think the first one's pretty good. How that's very good actually. How to study without losing focus. How do you manage distractions? So why don't you answer this? Why don't we do this? I asked you questions. Why don't you pick a question? Let me do this. I pick a question.
Okay.
I ask you, and you answer, and I'll answer, and then you pick a question, and I'll
I
answer, and
will.
you answer. How's
That's
that?
perfect. That's perfect. Yeah. So
Cool.
I will start with that one. Without losing focus, I don't know. For me, because I enjoy learning languages so much, it's not really been an issue about maintaining focus or not. I've never physically had to think about, oh, like, are all the distractions away? Okay, now I can learn a language. Because when you're speaking a language, eventually you're going to be distracted on all fronts. So I don't know if I really have a good answer to that one. So that's kind of a lame way to start, but why don't you go, Brian?
All good, all good. Okay, so how do I study without losing focus? How do I manage distraction? So let me just talk about my experience with learning German, because I resisted. I didn't want to learn German the whole time, so I had to stay focused because I didn't want. So if I don't want, you don't want to do something, you find millions of ways to try to distract yourself.
That's true. Procrastination.
So how I stay focused is to create a very specific, measurable goal, and which is a 90-day, very measurable 90 days. I want to have a 15-minute conversation with my previous father-in-law. We're not together anymore, but my father-in-law, I just call him Papa. I just want to call him Papa. Okay, that's what I call him. I'm going to continue to call him Papa. Yes. So I want to have a very specific, measurable goal of 15-minute conversation in 90 days. So it's not like, okay, I'm going to learn Spanish. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, you can learn forever if you want to, without any specific measurable goal. So the whole point of learning this language is to speak with him. So I'm gonna have that's why I came up with the conversation, the specific measurable goal of 15-minute conversation.
Right.
And another ways that I can stay focused and manage my distraction is I created a punishment for myself.
Whoa.
my
Hard.
my punishment for myself, if I can't hold a 15-minute conversation with him in 90 days, I will have to wash his toilet and live with him for a month.
Wow.
No, actually a week. It's only 7 days, not a month. No, I think that's too harsh for myself. I think 7 days is already bad enough. I think it was 7 days.
Okay.
So I remember telling him that I need to tell him before I start the challenge. So if I don't tell anybody about this challenge, I can just like give up and not tell anybody. Nobody will know about it. So the first thing I came up with this idea is to sit with him and had Julia, which is my previous partner, to tell him that I'm gonna do this. And then the first thing he did? The first thing he did was he looked very serious, and then he reached over the countertop to get his calendar, and he start counting 90 days from now, and he draw a circle and X on the 90 days, so that he knows exactly when I'm gonna go have a 15-minute conversation with him in 90 days.
Okay.
So having a specific measurable goal and possibly a punishment or reward, whatever works for you, to keep you motivated, that will keep
I like
you
that.
to keep you focused and you be more focused on. So you let go of this distraction.
I like it. Yeah, that kind of goes along with, I'm seeing questions along here about what happens when you get stuck in language learning, right? So beyond being able to focus, having a measurable final goal, whether it's traveling somewhere and being able to order a coffee like you're drinking right now, or a conversation, or be able to watch a movie and without subtitles. That's a very good way, having a end goal, right?
Great. So I guess you can ask me a question now.
Let me see. Okay. What is your motivation for learning languages if doing so is not a requirement for your job or schooling and you're too busy?
So I already said one of my motivation is to have a conversation with my father-in-law. not because he pushed me, not because I have to, because I can get, even if you live in a foreign country, you can get by if you really try hard. If you try, you can really get by. You can surround yourself with people who speak English, and you don't really have to learn the language.
Oh yeah, especially as a native English speaker, absolutely.
Totally. So I don't really have to learn German, because I just surround myself with English speakers, and my Julia, my previous partners, we just communicate in English, right? So I learned because I was moved by him, and I just want to connect with him. So that's one reason. Another language that I learned is Japanese, and I was just really fascinated by the Japanese culture ever since growing up, and I love Japan. It was my favorite country to visit, and I cycle halfway across Japan, and I know that before I go, I knew that a lot of Japanese speakers, especially the village that I passed through, they can't speak English, so I have to be able to speak to connect with them. And traveling, it's why another reason why I took on learning Japanese, and I got so much reward just being able to hold a 15-minute conversation, just a 15-minute very basic. I got so much more experience. You don't have to be fluent to be able to get these kind of experience when you go to just by holding a 15-minute conversation can get you so much. I had discount that most people think that you can't get any discount in Japan, but I got like discount. I talked to police. I talked to I met people in an onsen, like hot spring when you're completely naked. I just start talking to people, and then people invite me to their home because I'm camping, right? So people know that I need a place to stay, and then they'll let me. It's just amazing. So there's a lot of reason why we can learn a language and get so much out of it. You may not see it when you're learning it, but once you can hold like the basic level, you get so much out of learning and speaking language.
Right.
So these are my motivation.
Well,
Gavin?
On my end, I completely agree with you about travel. In fact, after having learned Spanish and then after having learned Portuguese and traveled both before having learned the languages and after it, the experience, like you said, is so much deeper, so much richer when you can connect to people in their native tongue. And I almost don't want to travel to a different country without learning that language in the future. Like, it's ruined me for the future. But my motivation originally was different. Like you said, I didn't, as a native English speaker, I never had to learn a language other than what they forced you to pass high school, right? I fell in love with the idea that I was essentially speaking a code, okay? And like as a kid, I remember loving writing codes and passing messages that people didn't understand. And nowadays, and especially with Portuguese, it being my second foreign language now, it was so rewarding this last time when I was in Brazil, acting, I'm sure you've done this before, acted as a translator between two people who don't understand each other, or two groups of people in the room. To be able to understand a whole group of people and the other group of people, and everyone turns to you to pass the messages through, that feeling alone is such amazing motivation to learn whatever language. You just feel so useful and so helpful, and also kind of awesome because you're speaking a code, So that's been a fun motivation too.
Great. Speaking the code, and I think this, for whoever's asked this question, what are your motivation? I think the most important question is ask this for yourself and figure out what that motivation for yourself, because you just created for your what you just said. You just created motivation out of thin air. Like, ooh, it would be really cool. Wouldn't it be really cool?
Totally. Absolutely, man. Exactly.
So whatever gets you motivated, whatever gets whatever lights you up, then do that and go with it, run with it. So you don't have to listen to other people's motivation. Find that motivation for yourself, that lights a fire under your ass, and then you go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important.
That's what I need to say.
That's where it all comes from, for sure.
Great. So now my turn. Let me find a question.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm going to ask. Okay, how do you get out of the learning plateau? Get out of a learning plateau, and have fun. How do you have fun?
Oh man, how do I have fun? Well, my first plateau was with Spanish when I felt that there was no reason I needed to use this, and the same reason that kids hate learning math. Like, when am I ever going to use this in life? So the first stepping out of the plateau was realizing that there are native speakers to communicate with, but I'm sure most of the people watching this know that already. So conversation, connecting on a human level got me out of the first plateau. The second plateau probably happened when I started learning Portuguese, and I was just so bogged down with grammar and listening to lessons and stuff. Man, I think just varying up the resources and trying to plug every moment of my time that I wasn't using with something novel, something fun, something different. If it didn't work, don't worry about completing it. Just the variation really helped me a lot, and especially then, now that I have the YouTube channel, having to make videos in Portuguese, and I'll talk about that more in a bit, actually seeing yourself on camera and editing yourself on camera in another language. But having to work every day with the comments that I was receiving, or the content that I wanted to create, kind of forced me out of this plateau without even knowing it, and all of a sudden I'm like floating free on the other side, and it was having to use it, but it was all for something fun and something that I loved, which was this YouTube channel.
Wow, that's great. That's great, man. I hear that. I hear that. Like, one way to get out of plateau is put yourself into an environment that will help you out, help you push you through that plateau. Like,
Right.
nobody had told you that you have to make that YouTube channel, right? You just did it yourself,
Right.
and then it got you through your plateau.
Yeah.
And so that's really great. For me, how I have fun. Actually, before I talk about having fun, I want to talk about plateau. I think plateau is a myth. I
How
think a
so?
plateau is a myth. It's a myth because I think we're very bad at first of all, you have no idea if something's working inside your brain, or it's going to click in the next moment or not. You have no idea. So you could be struggling, and all of a sudden you're like through it. And then, so, I think there are two things. One is we don't know when the next moment's going to click.
Yeah.
As long as we keep going, as long we just keep going and not beating ourselves up, oh no, I'm in the plateau, this sucks, da da da. As long as we can let that go and just keep going, because you go through. It's pretty much guaranteed. If you stick to it, you go through it.
Yeah, I would say you're right about that. Yeah.
Another thing is that I just lost my chain of thought.
Well,
We
I
are
mean,
very. Let me just finish that thought. The
go
second
ahead.
thing is, like, we are very bad at remembering where we came from.
What do you mean?
Meaning, like, we don't remember what the progress that we made throughout the last month
Yes.
or last 2 months, right? So we may think that, oh, I didn't progress at all, I'm in a plateau. But if you actually have a way, for example, making videos, if you look back your videos, like
Oh,
from the
gosh.
beginning to here, you may be thinking, wow, I improved so much, I didn't even know,
Absolutely.
right?
It's almost embarrassing watching my original videos and thinking, like, back then I thought that it's actually the reverse of me. I thought I was speaking fantastic Portuguese, but I realized how much I'm like pausing, and I actually ended up making a video compiling all of these progressional videos that I posted, and you can see your own evolution. And even right now, I'm sure if I look back in 2 years, I'll be like, whoa, like, back then I thought I was fantastic, and I was doing a webinar, and I was still had so much to learn. So both ways, you forget where you don't know how much you have to gain, but you're right. You need to remember where you came from.
And I see this happen a lot in the @ONE challenge, because one of the things that we ask people to do is make a day 0 video, and then
Uh-huh.
day 30 video, and day 60 video, and a day 90 video that having a conversation with a native speaker. A lot of people go like, oh, I'm in the plateau, I am not progressing. Look at your day 0 video, and they come back, oh yeah, I made actually made a lot of progress.
That's awesome. That's so fantastic. I feel like that must be very motivational for people.
It is. So a lot, I think this plateau and not progressing, it has a lot to do with in our heads.
Yeah.
A lot of us, it has a lot to do with beating ourselves up, and oh, I'm not moving as fast as I want to. But they just forgot how much they move, and they just don't know. And another thing is they don't know that you can change in any moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how what I need to say about plateau.
I love it.
And then the next thing is having fun. I think having fun is very important, because if you're learning something, even if it's something that's really effective, that's like, you know, all the polar gods say that this is the most effective method, and but you're not having fun with it. If you're not having fun with it, if it's really effective, it's no use, because you're not going to keep it up, right? You can only do so much if you're not having fun with it. So having fun is it's having fun, and having it being effective has a lot to do with how successful you'll be when learning a language. So and so having fun is it's a personal thing, you know. So you need to explore how you need to figure out how you have fun. For me, how I have fun is really talking to people, and you know, I actually help a lot with this. And how I have fun is I just schedule italki lesson and have conversation with people.
Yeah.
And that's how I have fun. And sometimes I have too much fun and not reviewing the lessons, and I don't learn as much. So that's
I was going
something
to ask you about that, actually.
yeah. So having fun, like learning, like speaking with people, connecting with the person, like especially finding the person that you like speaking with, it makes a big difference.
Right.
And
Let
that's
let
how I
me
have
ask
fun.
you a
Yeah.
question then.
Yeah.
So you're talking about having fun, and I saw a question on here about how much time do you use? Okay, you know, fun things aside, conversation, all that. When you're starting a language, you need to learn verb conjugations. You need to learn certain aspects, and that's not the funnest thing, you know, there is. It's not like watching a movie or connecting with someone or traveling, right? So
Yeah.
how do you balance that, especially for someone learning a language from scratch?
Yeah. For me, I think whatever we do in life, there's an order. There's an order in life in whatever we do, right? Like just like we put a seed in the ground, there's an order that goes. I don't know if you noticed this. Sometimes I'm just not ready for grammar, and if I force myself to learn grammar, I just don't go. But you know, eventually, I'll get to a point where, oh, I want to learn grammar.
Yeah.
Right. This is a time for me to learn grammar, and then I will be interested in learning grammar. Then I want to learn grammar, and then I progress. So does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And what's making you want to learn grammar is because you're enjoying these other activities and you're motivated by your
Exactly.
goals too. Yeah.
Exactly. So you know, if it's not the time, don't force yourself. Learn something else too. There's other aspect. There's maybe just starting to introduce yourself with somebody, and just learning the phrases. Like what I do is I start with simple phrases that I like to say,
Yeah.
phrases I want to understand. I start with those because those are fun. Those are the things that I can connect with people right away, and that's what get me interested, and what's get me motivated. And then eventually,
Right.
I'll get to a point where I want to communicate more things that I have to learn grammar. Oh, this friend of mine, I want to say this thing to my friend, then I need to learn this grammar then, right? And then
Right.
I'll go learn it, and then I'll think of ways of how I can incorporate the grammar points into my speaking. For example, I like to break this down. I don't really call it grammar because because I think, I don't know about you, I have a negative connotation to grammar. So whenever
Yeah, I
you
did. But I mean, exactly what you're saying. Make yourself want to learn the grammar. Like, I love grammar now, and I would consider myself a grammar snob in English. But
yeah
like making yourself love it, like, and not have a negative connotation has been kind of how I've perceived it. And I love learning, or, you know, mastering irregular verbs now and all that, just because of that motivation.
yeah the first thing that I get myself to actually like to because most people have a negative connotation with the word grammar. So I just change it. If you don't like the word grammar, change it to something else. I like to call it a structure. Like different
Like a building
structures.
structure.
Yeah, exactly. Different structures. So I just like to, okay, I'm going to learn a structure today. I'm going to learn a structure of how to describe, how to use the structure. For example, a structure of like, how do you say X, Y, Z, or like how do I say a structure of if then, right? So today I'm just gonna practice for 15 minutes if and then structure.
Yeah, structure, not grammar.
Exactly, exactly.
I hear ya, for sure.
So I just, first of all, I move past the native connotation of grammar, and then and it becomes something that makes sense for me. Okay, structure or code, like what you said earlier,
Oh
decoding
yeah.
things, right? So it's up to you. We don't have to call it grammar, and we can change it the way that. So that's how I learn things that I don't want to learn. I look at, okay, if I have a native condition, okay, how can I make it that's fun for me? That's first I call it something that makes sense for me first. Grammar, what does that mean?
Yeah,
You
I
know?
hear you. Yeah, perfect.
So yeah, that's how I answer that question. Did I answer your question?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we both did a pretty good team job on that one.
Okay. So let me ask you a question now.
Okay.
Okay. So what goals do you strive for? Do you define your goals differently depending on the language you're learning?
Depending on the language I'm learning. No, it does not depend on the language that I'm learning. I think my goals right now, and especially thinking about wanting to learn another language coming up here, would be to reach fluency. And what does fluency mean? Because everyone has different definitions, right? And that was another question I saw on this list. To me, that means being able to hold a conversation in a language in a non-awkward way. So if you have to pause or say, hey, I'm about to pause, or what's the word, and joke about it, that's fine. You have the structure. Maybe you don't, of course you don't know every word in their dictionary, every word in their vocabulary, but to be able to communicate in essentially a native fashion because it's not awkward is my goal. There are other mini goals along the way, like complete this grammar book by X date, and I know that it will help me, or complete so-and-so lesson, do so-and-so videos. But I think the end goal is to be able to connect in a non-awkward, natural, fluent way.
Got it.
How about you?
Cool. For me, I like to break it down to like small things, because fluency, first of all, everybody has a different definition, and also fluency sounds like a huge mountain, like
it does, doesn't it?
It sounds like an intimidating, scary mountain to climb. So I like to break it down to first 15-minute conversation. Maybe it's not a very smooth and maybe not a very natural conversation, but I communicate. I get what the other person is saying. The person understand what I'm saying. So I'll do the 15-minute conversation first. And within that 15-minute conversation, I pick the topics that I like to learn, like to talk about. Because like you can be fluent in not awkward in certain subject, but you could be very awkward and weird in talking about space science or something like that, right? In Portuguese, right? Yeah. So I like to bring up what Judith Mayer said, another polyglot who's the organizer of the polyglot gathering in Berlin. She likes to say, you may not be fluent in all subjects, but you can be fluent in one topic at a time. Right? If you're one topic at a time. So I just take it one topic at a time. I don't even worry about, am I fluent now, or am I I just focus on the small little goal.
And you're talking about maybe the vocabulary of that topic too.
I'm more talking about being able to conversate in that topic.
Right, but which would include the structure, the grammar that you're talking about, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, of course, you need the basic understanding of the structure, and then the next thing is the vocabulary in that topic.
Yes.
Right, because once you understand the structure, all you need to is put in those vocabulary that you like to talk about, right?
Right.
So by breaking it down to okay, not like fluency in all topics and everything we want to talk about, we break it down to, okay, first a 15-minute conversation, and then maybe possibly per topic that you're interested in, which is a lot more interesting to talk about, to learn, than to something that I don't care about, right? So
but what motivates you, it sounds like, is this conversation thing again. So we kind of both share that, right? Like the end goal of speaking any language usually is connecting with people.
Connecting with people. Yes. I mean, that's the final end goal, is to be able to connect with people. And at the same time, I want to just add one more thing is like, you'd be surprised. You don't have to be fluent to be able to connect with people. You
That's true. You don't
you
even
know
have to speak their language. I mean, hand gestures, right? And smiles, and absolutely. Yeah, you're right about
totally.
that.
Totally. So you can have and by just getting over the hump of having that 15-minute conversation and connecting with people in that level, it'll get you so motivated to want to connect more.
Can I ask you something? Would you
Yeah,
consider yourself a perfectionist?
I'm far from a perfectionist. I'm,
See, I am very much of a perfectionist, or I was a perfectionist
yeah,
before really trying to work with my Spanish conversationally and then
yeah,
learning Portuguese. And that was
yeah.
something personally that I had to get over, because like you're saying, you can have a fairly basic level of conversation but still have a 15-minute, not even hand gestures, like vocal conversation. Sure, skipping some words, messing up some grammar, you're going to make
Mm,
mistakes.
mm,
And that
mm.
was a very the day, I don't know if it was a certain day, but that getting over that hump of losing my fear of not being perfect all the time
Yeah,
was so important to my
yeah.
outlook on learning languages now. I know I don't have to be perfect. Like, it's for perfectionists, I think that's a really important thing to remember, is that get
That's
over
a
it.
that's a huge hurdle for a lot of language um, people who learn to speak a language, like either perfectionists, or they may say perfectionist, but and there's another fear that could be underneath, that is the fear of speaking with somebody. Oh, actually,
You
it's the
think
same.
that?
It could be the same. I think they're kind of connected. Like, they don't
Oh,
want to
I
make
consider it the same animal for sure. You're so afraid you're going to be embarrassed that you miss a
exactly.
word, or that you literally know it, but you can't open your mouth, and then what's the whole point?
Exactly. And that's such a huge thing. And I just want to point out that, like, this is it's great on one hand that you hold a high standard of yourself, right?
Definitely,
Right?
it
Whole
has
high
a
standard.
place,
It has
but
it has advantages which we completely embrace, that we hold a high standard of ourselves. At the same time, we got to understand that this could also stop you from achieving great things in life,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely,
So because if we are trying to be perfect in everything that we do, we won't get that far. We won't get far, right? It's in the making the mistake. It's in trying new things. It's to daring to make those mistakes that can help us reach places that we never think that we could actually reach, right? So
there are thousands
in,
and thousands of mistakes. It's not 100, it's not 10, it's not 500, it may be tens of thousands. It's just, you get over it. Just like you said, you need to realize what the end goal is and what the reward is of being able to connect.
so the rewards of getting over this perfectionist thing, it not only will help you in speaking the language, could also help you in all areas of your life. So I like to look at the benefits, like, yes, it stops you. At the same time, look at all the benefits you can get, and look at
Right,
look at the limiting things that stops you from being a perfectionist. and
right,
and, and nothing's wrong either, right? As I said, I also embrace the high standard that we have for ourselves of
right.
being a perfectionist.
Yeah,
So great, cool. So let's see, I think your turn to ask me a
I
question.
think it is. Yeah.
How you
Hmm.
doing? Are you having a good time, Gavin?
Oh, I'm having an awesome time. How are you doing?
Great, me too. I'm having a great
This
interaction
is
with you.
great.
This is fun.
Um, I thought, here's a little more of a specific question.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips on moving words from your passive vocabulary to your active vocabulary?
How do you
So if
define
you're learning
passive
words,
and active?
dictionary learning, or I don't know, flashcards or something.
Hmm.
Well, conversationally, how do you know? How can you make sure they're at the forefront, I guess, of your mind?
Yeah. For me, it's basically the questions. I'm just going to rephrase the question,
Yeah,
possibly to understand it. It's more like, how can we get the words that get stuck in here and kind of go from here to here, like, to speak it out, because we have
right.
all these. vocabulary, but how do you string it together so it can actually come out of our mouths? I
Right.
think the only way for me, the only way that works for me is to speak. I mean, there's no other way around turning the passive vocabulary in my head to active vocab that I can actually use. And the only way around that for me is to speak. And so I schedule a lot of italki lessons.
Yeah,
And
so increasing your exposure, you're saying.
yeah, so without practicing it, there's no other way. Yeah, that's it. I mean, simple as that.
Yeah. I have a
What do you think?
slightly, well, so I agree with what you said. When I was in Brazil back in February or March,
Yeah.
this question started out to me because I actually had, when I was studying flashcards, I actually had a way that I wanted to approach this. I would pick 3 words every day that I learned with flashcards that I thought, hey, someday this may be useful, but I don't know when I'm going to use it. And I would that day specifically, you know, at the school I was at, or you know, in a restaurant, or just on the street, on the bus, try to converse and bring that word up. That word, one of the 3 words of the day, bring it up, you know? And usually I succeeded in maybe 1 of those words a day, but because I was thinking of it so much through the day, I realized that all these words that I had selected in the past as kind of a daily challenge for the day kind of stuck with me. So that was a specific little trick that I used.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thinking of a specific 3 words that you're gonna use, no matter what, trying to bring it out throughout the day.
Exactly. Or like trying to, even if it sounds forced, like in a conversation, trying to use, you know, that word or something. But because I'm just spinning in my mind about how can I make this work, I just remember it. You don't forget it, you know?
Great. As you said that, something came up to my mind. A lot of people use flashcard. I don't really like flashcard myself. I like to use learning phrases, and then I like to use a spaced repetition, and then I need to type it out instead of just looking at it. I get myself to actually do another thing to incorporate. I need to, for example, it'll be like, you know, how are you, and I'll need to type out like in Japanese or in German, kind of like dictating the thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and then I think Anki provides this function. Before I use this this app called Genius for Mac. I'm not so sure if it's available anymore. So I just keep typing it out, and I'll have the audio next to it ready, and then I'll listen to it, and then I'll speak it while I'm typing it out or something like that. So I have different kind of ways to stimulate myself: speaking it, typing it, reading it, and then hearing it, and then, you know. So and then I'll try to use it in my italki lessons.
Right.
So that's how I.
You know, I agree with you about trying to learn not just words but whole phrases or collocations, you could call them in English, right? And that's why I've personally loved Anki, because I mean, you can do flashcards of just words, but I love seeing how these words appear in phrases. And also the website Lingui I use as my dictionary, which uses, other than just providing a definition, it searches the web for these phrases that translators in the past who are bilingual have translated this word in the middle of phrases in the past, you know? And so you see this word stuck in this other phrase, just like a fossil in the other phrase, how it was used. And it is fascinating to catch it like in its use like that, instead of just memorizing rote single words, you know? So I agree with you on that front, definitely.
Great. Awesome. I think Anki also have the function of being able to input the phrase, I think.
Does it? Like you type it in?
Yeah, you type it. I think so. But that was
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never tried that. That's interesting.
Yeah, you can look and see if you use Anki. I just like to keep it simple.
Well, with a language that's so foreign to me like Czech, I imagine that will be a useful tool, because I mean, with Spanish, maybe we could move into talking a little more about managing multiple languages at the same time.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So in my case, when I learned Portuguese from Spanish, I had a specific textbook for English native speakers who speak Spanish who want to learn Portuguese. It was a very specific textbook, but it was great. I didn't have to start all the way at 0. I was already 50% of the way there. I knew what conjugations looked like in Romance languages, and I just needed to know what were the false cognates, what the pronunciation differences were, and go from there. So that's been great on the front end. You know, my Portuguese learning was much quicker because of that.
So you mean you're learning? So you mean I just want to give it back to you. So you're learning Portuguese with a Spanish dictionary or tool?
With a Spanish foundation, let's call it. It was for English native speakers. It was just saying, you know, this is this verb. This is, you know, it becomes this verb in Portuguese, and so use that, and then know that the conjugation is the same, and know that there's a future subjunctive, and then you're set. You don't have to learn all new endings again, something like that.
Okay.
But my problem was that while it was fantastic on the front end, now on the back end, it's because they come from the same place in my mind, at least that's how I picture it happening. I often confuse them, not necessarily in Portuguese because I use it so much, but Spanish because it's so, you know, I don't use it as much, and it's so similar to Portuguese, and that's where I learned Portuguese, that now every third word becomes Portuñol, you know, I'm adding Spanish words into Portuguese. So I'm constantly looking for ways that I can separate them in my mind. And I wanted to ask you, it sounds like you're balancing 4 languages then. What's some strategy you've used to do that?
First of all, I just want to clarify that I'm kind of like because I think maintaining languages is everybody has a different take on it. Like every polyglot has a different take on it. Some people don't maintain it. For example, Ole Richards, I know that he can speak all these languages at a very high level, but he don't maintain it because he only use it when he knows he's going to use it. Right? He only go back to it and try to reactivate it, which is already there, when he needs to use it. Right?
So some people rapidly study it. You're saying before he needs to use it.
Exactly. So you don't try to maintain it or lose it. Yes, you lose it, but you know it's there somewhere. And he just when he, for example, for me, I want to go to Japan sometime next year. So I'm thinking about, okay, now let me plan ahead. Okay, I'm going to start reactivating Japanese. So I don't go actively maintain it. That's one thing. The second thing is there are also people who maintain them. And one of the polyglots, his name's Kevin Morehouse, he said this is what he does. He focuses on one language, just one language, but on the downtime, for example, he would listen to another language in the radio or songs or like passively, not like actively, so that he get like exposure to the language. Then that's how he maintains it. And some people, for example, people pick a profession that actually have to use these different languages, and then they have to use it. So then that's how we maintain it. So everybody maintains it a different way, or they don't maintain it. For me, it's an interesting story, like, because you said that you learn Portuguese and Spanish, they're similar, and it's very hard to not mix them together.
Yes,
right?
Definitely.
I was attempting to learn German and Japanese at the same time.
2 very different languages.
2 very languages, and guess what happens?
You didn't mix them, did you?
I mixed them like crazy.
Oh my God.
I mean, I even have a video of me just speaking it, and then I want to speak Japanese, and then the German came out. And
wow, I actually did not know that was that easy to occur.
So what I think, I don't have any scientific background to it. I think what happens is in our brain, what happens is when we're learning a new language, especially when we're not in a high level, what happens is these languages are like stored in like one place in the brain or something. Kind of like what you said.
Yeah.
Your mind goes to the same place to grab that that language. And what happens is when it's new language, they stay in the same place. So that's why when you speak, it just kind of makes it. Okay, it just kind of doesn't know which one to use. So so it doesn't really.
That's what scares me about that polyglot that you said would, you know, actively practice and then passively just listen to radio or something. You know, I feel like that would play tricks on my mind. And in a way, like one of the best tips that I heard about maintaining multiple languages is that when you want to speak that language, you send yourself back to wherever you were when you were really enthusiastic and really starting to grab that language. So for me, that was really good advice. I learned it maybe a month ago. When I speak in Spanish now, I think back to how the dust smelled in Peru, and the cold air, and what the buildings looked like, and I almost take a little Zen moment for 5 minutes and like think about that, think about the people, and go. And I'm pulling that from a different place in my mind than where Portuguese occupies. And so kind of getting these other feelings in your body when you're speaking, I think has been a really interesting way to approach this problem.
Great. Like as you're saying that, like, I just basically said maybe 3-4 different ways, and you just create a new way to actually maintain and come from, I think this maintain it and not mix them, and a new way to not mix them together, right? So I think it's just so fascinating that this is just like this whole thing, like this whole body and the brain is just like a fascinating miracle machine that we are all in a journey and exploration of how to use this thing.
It is. Right? Get outside your head.
So there's no one way, and you also, whoever's watching, you also have this fascinating miracle machine that's right here. So find and explore ways that works for you. Maybe everything that we said, or everything, maybe even the best polyglots, like all the people in the same room say the same thing. Maybe every single one of them doesn't work for you, but you can find something that works for you yourself, right? Yeah. So I think that's very important to consider that we should have like an open mind to explore on this journey of how we can learn that works best for me, how we can learn that works best for you.
I love it. I'm gonna shed a tear here. Very inspirational.
Well, let me wipe that off for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great. Okay, so let's look at my turn to ask another question. Okay, so since it seems like that you love like verb conjugation, what is your best way to learn verb conjugation?
Share your best. Gosh. What is my best way to learn verb conjugation? I got to be honest with you. I learned Spanish over the course of 8 years before finally I was like, all right, I love it, and I'm going to Peru, and I'm just using it. And then Portuguese is so similar that I almost forget how I've learned it in the first place. So it'll be very interesting to start learning Czech and to see how that goes. One thing for me when I was trying to distinguish between these verb conjugations was the first time I had a conversation partner in Peru. I would meet with this girl once a day, and for about an hour we would speak partially in Spanish, partially in English. And actually having to tell stories to her about what happened to me or my plans or something like that and communicate with a human made me realize how important these conjugations are, and really forced me to kind of to be able to pull quickly these conjugations out of my mind. So I guess a quick answer then would be, rote memorization for a while, and it may be boring, but I know that it has this great end goal of being able to tell stories, to connect, to speak.
Great. I think what you said is great in terms of like I think it's very important to tying in this conjugation with something that you like doing, which is talking to somebody. Like for me, it's the same thing. Yes, I need to actually sit down to learn the conjugation, and actually, because if you don't know it, you just don't know it.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah.
There's really no
way around that.
There's no way around it. If you don't know the conjugation, you just don't freaking know the conjugation. So you just need to sit down, at the same time tie in something that you like. Like I like to all the words that I like to conjugate. Like for example, what I said earlier before about diving into the topic that I like to talk about. So these topics I like to talk about, so I want to conjugate them, right? And then I'll go into the conversation, say I want to talk about this, and I want to practice conjugating this, okay? And then I'll just practicing conjugating this with maybe making different sentences, because if you think about it, speaking at the end of the day is just about making sentences, making so small sentences. If you break it down, right, it's not like you don't write essays, you don't do a speech. You break it down, you're just basically making small sentences, and then find these little things to connect these small sentences together.
Right.
That's really what it is. So I just break it down to like, okay, let's make these small sentences. Okay, I'm just keep practicing, and okay, I know this thing that connects this. Okay, let's practice using this to connect this and this, and now just go practice speaking
Yeah.
with someone that I like talking to, someone that makes me
Right.
feel
And
comfortable.
someone who's probably patient too, right? Because
Yeah,
obviously
well,
that's not the way a native speaks, but you as a learner need to just
totally.
get over it. And
Totally. I think finding, I think italki tutor. That's why I like paying for my lessons. You know, like that's what you're paying for.
I
You're
agree.
paying for them.
Definitely focus.
You're paying for them to be patient with you,
Right.
right?
And so
It's
you lose a little bit of that fear of embarrassment and all that.
exactly just you can. Somebody in the At One Challenge said something like, you're paying to torture them with your broken language. So it's okay. They are okay with it. That's why they're there. Okay, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bad way to put it, but
I like that. No, it's true, and it's nice that that platform exists so that because you're gonna have to torture someone, you know. So as a perfectionist, again, I just would feel so bad that it would be my friends repeatedly that are having
exactly.
flaws, but that's the nature of the game, and it's really nice to have these tools online where you can torture someone else and then go out there and speak
No,
one sentence faster or something.
I want to say you're paying for it though. You're not just torturing it for free, right? So
Right, right,
you're actually
right.
you're giving them something in return and saying thank
And
you
you can
so much
feel
for
good
putting
about
up.
it, for sure.
Thank you so much for putting up with me, and thank you so much for being patient with me. And I'm going to give you a little bit of return. I think that's a fair price to pay, and
Very much so.
and yeah. So I pick those, as you said, who you talk to is very important. So one thing that is very important is to try many different italki teachers,
Yeah.
and until you find a couple, you can't just rely on one or two, because they're people too. They're family, they have jobs, and they have gone vacation. So you can't really rely on one or two. You need to try many different italki teachers so you can rotate them, and they speak differently, and they have possibly different accents that you can learn from too. So it's
Yeah.
always good to try different italki teacher to find people that you like connecting with, have are patient with you, and on rotation, that so that you can practice with different people.
Yeah. So that's been your experience is doing this kind of on a rotation.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly. And nothing's wrong with also language exchange too. I usually have maybe like 3 or 4 tutor when I'm learning Japanese or even German. I have 3 or 4, and maybe I have 1 or 2 language exchange. Language exchange is great, but it takes time and effort to find them, to find the good ones. And
Yeah.
usually
Especially
the
before you traveled there and learned the language well. Absolutely.
yeah, they got to be motivated too. If they're not, it's if there's no, it's just the truth of it. Yeah, for me, it's like it takes maybe 15 to 20 language exchange.
Wow.
I need to find, I need to send out all these requests,
Yeah.
and possibly meet that
Yeah.
a time, and then okay, possibly meet, okay, and then we meet, and then we gotta see how we can maintain it. And versus with paying like a small fee for half an hour, I still need to try different ones, but it's a lot less effort. I save a lot
Oh
more
yeah. You know
effort,
it's
a lot more time.
right. I can
So
understand.
that's what I like to do. With learning, I don't know how we get this topic, but
That's great.
word conjugation tying with like finding the right people to practice with, and willing to pay for it. If you can't pay for it, that's okay. You're just going to spend more time and effort to find the right language partner for you.
Right.
So it's your turn to ask me a
I
question.
love it. No, I mean, I think I agree with everything that you said, and every time I wanted to voice my opinion there, I did. So I think we did a good tag team job on that one.
Right.
So let me
So
pick another one here
yeah, you pick a question.
for you. Okay, there you go. And this could be interesting for you coming from Asia, but also having a German background and seeing what the United States are like. Does learning another language have an effect on your personality? And let's see. Furthermore, does learning another language have an effect on how you speak the languages you already speak, including your native tongue? Okay. So again, does it affect your personality? And then going back to your native tongue, does it affect you there?
Really, really interesting. I know a lot of people say that it does, and I think how I want to say, how I want to answer this question is up to you.
Up to you what? To say
Up
it
to you.
how you want to change or
Exactly.
who you
So
want to be.
who you want to be. Exactly. For me, I'm just being myself, be my loud and energetic self all the time. So I'm pretty much just I'm pretty like self-expressed, and I say my feeling. I just kind of say this. I'm me. Either you like me or you don't.
Right, right, right.
And I'm the same way in all the languages. But for sometimes, some people may not feel like they're not as expressive they want to, and they want to be more expressive. And this is the perfect time for you to be who you want to be in when you're speaking a language, because it's really interesting. Like, language plays a big part of who we are, because
Oh yeah. How
who
we're
we
perceived.
yeah how we because who we are is really how we perceive the world, how we perceive a topic, how we perceive somebody,
And how
and
you perceive that others are perceiving you in return too. Right?
how, yes, exactly. And all of that arises inside of languages.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
because how you see the world, okay, I like this, how does it arise? In language. Oh, I don't like this, how does it arise? In language. So
Yeah.
so you can create the personality that you want in the new language you're learning. So that's why some people say, oh yeah, I have a new personality because they want to express more in a different way when they're learning a new
Yeah,
language.
it's like going off to college in the U.S., you say, like, you don't have to be the person you were in high school. You can be someone completely different in college, Although, on my end, I don't know if I think one of my hardest parts with conversational Spanish and Portuguese is that I'm a very sarcastic person, but I would consider myself sarcastic in a good way, funny, like I like to deliver jokes at the right time. And in a foreign language, it was very tough for me to know that, like, I want to deliver a joke. I want to, make people laugh. And that's who I am. And I almost get there, but I can't. And then the moment's over. And, so a lot of times I would find myself at the end of the night just, like, kind of sullen and frustrated almost. And that's not who I want to be. I want to be still just like you, energetic and fun. And that had a lot to do with getting over the perfectionism thing once again, So that was interesting. Talking about going back into sorry, did you want to say something?
No, we're good. Keep going.
So talking about going then, how it affects you back in your native tongue then after you've learned. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you, in Cantonese, having learned English and all that, do you think it's more of a cultural thing or because of language?
Well, I think in terms of for me, I think definitely learning English and learning English and struggling through it and growing in, like, going to college and high school in America definitely changed, like, who I am. Because I come back to Hong Kong, I'm not like a regular Hong Kong, like normal Hong Kong people. Like, they're different. You can just talk to them. I can't. It's a different. It's very hard to connect with them. So
Yeah.
it does affect me. I don't know. Did I answer? I don't know if
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds very cultural, on that front. And I don't have the experience of having lived somewhere necessarily for over 2 months, like you have. So I don't know. Maybe in a way, I'm more able to separate how language has affected me and how culture has affected me. But talking about language back in when I speak English now after having learned Spanish and Portuguese, I am so hyper aware of grammar structure and these amazing pronunciations that people are doing without even thinking about them, that people trying to speak English have problems with all the time, And so we're very, like, you feel very happy to be speaking in your native language. And I imagine this would happen whether I spoke Czech as a native language or Cantonese as a native language or Bengali or something, You feel kind of drawn to your native language again. But you also I have felt how lacking my language is, how many words it doesn't have, or how I want to express in certain ways. And I always tell my wife, oh man, Portuguese has a perfect word for this. Like Portuguese, I just did a video on this. Has a word for your wife or your girlfriend or whoever, putting their hand through your head and just gently scratching. Like they have a single word for that. And you have to describe that in 6 or 7 words to someone in English. So that's
Yeah.
a simple example of a vocabulary word, but just expressions, just ways, that people interact. In Portuguese, people are giving feedback during conversations that almost so much that you think they're interrupting you. Like, you right now would be going, okay, tell me more. Yeah, okay. And in English, we just sit there, kind of. And
Yeah.
then speaking in my native language again, I noticed this like little space that English can't occupy that I didn't know existed before learning these other languages. So that's been my experience going backwards.
I see. Jumping on what you said about how Portuguese had this word about your hair and like things
Yeah.
like that. Right? I found that like there are. I mean, I think every language expresses themselves differently, right? And then, for example, there are a lot of these Chinese songs that gives me the certain feelings that English song could never give me.
Yeah.
And there's some songs that in an English song could never really. It's a different feeling that a Chinese song could ever give me, right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to how different languages kind of touch upon different aspect of my emotions and how I express
Oh,
myself.
yeah. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And
So
use those feelings to maintain those languages separate then as you're learning them, is this
yeah,
advice that I was recently given that just like you said, because they occupy different spaces and make you feel different, use your whole body, when you're
yeah,
speaking like these experiential things.
yeah. So I think it's really interesting how different languages kind of allow us to express ourselves in a way that we probably may not have known that's in us, that's within us, right? So I
That's
think that's
so
another
beautiful. Like what
that's
great
another
motivation, even beyond talking with someone, to have these new lenses through which to see the world. Linguistically, we're
yeah.
not even talking about actual sights.
Yeah,
So great.
beautiful. It's a beautiful access. Let's put it that way. A
Yeah,
beautiful access. All right, so I think this has been a lot of fun, man.
this has been really, really awesome, and I really hope everyone who's watching this that we haven't bored you, and maybe even better that perhaps we all feel a little more motivated. I know I personally feel like I just want to go and study grammar for maybe 15 minutes right now.
15 minutes. Great. So where can people find you, Gavin?
So you can find me on my YouTube channel, which in English is Small Advantages. About 90% of my videos are in Portuguese, but there are some with English subtitles, and you can find my social networks through there. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And how about you,
Great.
Brian?
You can find. Oh, first of all, let's just ask you. So the people who are learning Portuguese will get value from on your channel.
They may. They'll see my progression in Portuguese, especially because the videos are chronological. I even made a specific video about posting clips of my former videos, like you do with the Add One Challenge, right? And going all the way up to where I am now. But my content is very much geared towards Brazilians learning English. So while my audience is about 5% American, I would say the majority is Brazilian. But you'll get, at least you'll see an American stumbling around with Portuguese, and maybe that'll give you motivation. Just like I got motivation to post my first video when I saw a guy I thought I could do better than. You could do that with me.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing. I just want to, for people who are curious.
Totally.
For me, you can find me at onechallenge.com.
And that's ADD.
ADD and then the number one, like
one.
Just like one.
Okay, add
onechallenge.com. And if you like to learn together with a group of people and who love to learn languages, and you want to be motivated by other people, seeing other people's posting the day 0 video, day 30 video, gets you motivated.
That sounds awesome.
And learn together to hold this 15-minute conversation in the language that you've always wanted to speak. Come join us at That One Challenge, and that's where you can find me. That's it, and I really want to thank italki for this opportunity. I personally use italki myself.
Yeah, likewise. Okay. I would like to thank you for this opportunity as well. I didn't realize that we were actually doing a live for the whole world to see, so this has been a really fun experience. And yeah, I use italki as well. So
great, thank you, italki.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you so much. So I'll see you guys later then.